The primary evidence that we have for Jesus' post-mortem appearances would come, first of all, from Paul's list of witnesses in 1 Corinthians 15. There he says that when Christ rose from the dead, he appeared to Cephas, or Peter, then to the 12 disciples, then to more than 500 brethren at one time, most of whom were still alive at the time of his writing, though some had died. Then he appeared to James, then to all the apostles, and then last of all, says Paul, he appeared also to me. So we have here a list of witnesses that Paul gives who had seen Jesus alive after his death. And certain of these can be correlated with appearances in the Gospels. For example, the appearance to Peter is also mentioned in the Gospel of Luke chapter 24. When the Emmaus disciples come back to Jerusalem, they meet the 12 disciples, or the 11 gathered together, and they say, "The Lord is risen indeed and has appeared to Simon." So that we have here two independent testimonies to the fact of an early appearance to Peter, as well as a reference to this perhaps in Mark, where in the angel's word he says, "Go to Galilee, tell Peter and his disciples is going before you to Galilee, there you will see him." So that virtually every New Testament scholar that I know of agrees that Peter did experience a resurrection appearance of Jesus shortly after his death. The appearance to the 12 mentioned by Paul next is the best attested appearance of in the Gospels. This is attested independently in the Gospel of Luke and in the Gospel of John, and concerns Jesus' appearance to the disciples in the upper room. We also have an appearance to the disciples mentioned in Matthew on a mountaintop in Galilee. Whether or not this is to be identified with the appearance to the 12 depends upon whether or not you think the circumstances of its location are legendary or factual, part of the factual narrative. If the location in Jerusalem is factual, such as is attested in both Luke and John, then I think that the mountaintop appearance in Galilee may well be another appearance. In fact, it could be the next appearance mentioned by Paul, the appearance to the 500 brethren. We have no explicit narrative of this in the Gospels, but an appearance to 500 people would have to take place out of doors, given the number involved. Perhaps on a hillside in Galilee, where the thousands had flocked to hear Jesus preach during his lifetime. And it's interesting to notice that the mountaintop appearance in Matthew is different than all the other appearances, in that while all the other ones were unexpected and were by surprise, the mountaintop appearance in Matthew is by appointment. It says that the disciples went to the mountain to which Jesus had appointed them to rendezvous with him, so that it may well be that the 12 were not alone when they met Jesus on the mountaintop. Indeed, the message given to the angel is communicated to the women. "Tell Peter and his disciples he is going before you to Galilee. There you will see him, as he told you." It may well be, I think, that the women accompanied the disciples to Galilee and also witnessed this appearance. And in fact, in Matthew's story, you'll recall he has that cryptic phrase that when Jesus appeared to them on the mountaintop, he said, they worshiped him, but some doubted. Now, could it be that this is a reference to a broader group of people that assembled with the 12 on the mountaintop to meet Jesus at the rendezvous time? I think this is not at all implausible. So it could be that the Matthean appearance is in fact the appearance to the 500 brethren. In any case, I think we have good grounds for accepting the historicity of the appearance to the 500 because of Paul's firsthand contact with them. This was not just a legendary story that Paul had received or heard about, because he knew that some of these people had died in the interim, and he was aware that most of them were still alive, and he is saying, in effect, they're still there to be questioned. You can talk to the witnesses. He could never have made that kind of challenge if this event had not occurred. So I think we have good grounds for affirming the appearance to the 500 on the basis of what Paul says. Next, he says that Jesus appeared to James, the brother of Jesus. And it's interesting that James and Peter, the two mentioned in the list in 1 Corinthians 15, are the two people that Paul met with when he first went up to Jerusalem after his conversion, after being in Damascus for 3 years. He spent 2 weeks in Jerusalem on a fact-finding trip during which time he said he met with Peter and James, and those are the two men that he refers to in the list. Now, we don't have any independent narrative of the appearance of Jesus to his younger brother James, but I think we have very good grounds for affirming its historicity. Why? Well, simply because neither James nor indeed any of the brothers of Jesus were apparently believers in Jesus during his lifetime. We have good evidence in the Gospels that show that none of Jesus' brothers thought that Jesus was the Messiah or the Lord or anybody particularly special. In fact, we have one fairly vicious story where the brothers of Jesus try to goad him into a death trap by showing himself publicly at a feast when they knew that the Jewish leaders were trying to persecute and kill him. And yet, we know also that later on in the early church, James, the brother of Jesus, emerges as one of the pillars of the New Testament church and finally one of the leaders of the church. R.H. Fuller, who is a fairly liberal New Testament critic, has said that even if there were not an appearance to James mentioned by Paul, we should have to invent one to explain the transformation that occurred in James between the time of his unbelieving days when Jesus was alive on earth and his leadership in the early church. I mean, most of us have brothers. What would it take to make you believe that your brother is the Lord, such that you would be willing to go to your death for this belief, as James did when he was martyred in AD 67 by the Jewish Sanhedrin for his belief that Jesus was in fact Lord, Son of God, and Messiah? Can there be any doubt that the reason for this change in James is what Paul says, then he appeared to James. Then Paul mentions the appearance to all the apostles. We don't know exactly what group this was, probably a group somewhat wider than the 12. Luke says that Jesus appeared during a period of 40 days to the disciples, and this was probably some appearance during that time. And then finally, Paul says he appeared also to me. And this is, again, a conversion as remarkable as James. Saul was a Jewish Pharisee. He was a persecutor of the church. He hated the Christian heresy and was determined to do everything in his power to stamp it out. He was actually responsible for the deaths of Christian men and women simply because of their faith in Jesus Christ. And then it all turned around for this man, because on the road to Damascus, he saw this appearance of Jesus. And he said, I saw Jesus our Lord. And this is what caused Saul the Pharisee to be transformed into Paul, the apostle and missionary of early Christianity. And this is undeniably attested in his own letters in the first hand. So that we have in Paul's information very good grounds for believing that various individuals and groups of people under various circumstances saw appearances of Jesus alive from the dead. And the gospel accounts, I think, provide confirmation and attestation that goes to confirm and fill out the details of these appearance stories.